So we're going to be talking with Meghan Meeker and on the topic generally about social media. But this is a unique a unique take on social media. We hear a lot about social media, and I think we're probably inundated on information about it. But when you listen to this, think about how this can apply, because there's a different approach, and I think that we get hit from a lot of different sources every day. So, Meghan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kurt.
Welcome back to another episode of 3 for 3 and the first episode of 2023. And we're excited to be back this year. This is a renewal year for us, a chance to look at some different topics, take a different approach on as we talk about leadership and marketing and communications and really everything that we think that is going to be important to you this year, and things are going to help you. And as you think about how you operate as a professional, as you look at how you run your business or organization, and we've got lots of great professionals and experts lined up for this year. So really excited to get started this year. But let me just go ahead and do a little introduction here to Meghan here, and then we'll get her talking about what she knows about here. Meghan is the current Senior Manager of Social Media at Veracast. She was previously the Director of Social Media and Engagement at AMP Strategy and ran the social media for the University of Akron, where her particular focus was content creation that inspired action and engagement. With a background in direct marketing, social media, and digital advertising, Meghan managed the social media accounts for several brands in the Sherwin-Williams family, bringing them into new social spaces and launching them into new markets. Her expertise in social media and online marketing also lent itself to an advisory and strategic role serving local companies who were trying to expand their reach in online markets while working for the Better Business Bureau. In her free time, Meghan is an accomplished photographer, seeing a direct correlation between digital marketing and compelling imagery that connects an audience to the brand or company. Meghan is a Northeast Ohio native who comes from a long line of gritty, witty, engaged, and civically minded entrepreneurs. Meghan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kurt. It's so fun hearing my bio.
I love your description of Northeast Ohio natives as witty and gritty. That's a good combination.
We have to be.
I think there's a certain humbleness that comes with that, but also a kind of respect to what I think the whole Northeast Ohio area has been through. I mean, how do you approach, I don't know, the self-identity that comes with that?
Oh, it's like I said, survival. We're the butt of the joke sometimes, and I like to remind people, maybe it's the marketer in me, but people will say, "Oh, you're still in Ohio. Oh, you landed in Akron. Oh, that's interesting." I'm like, why? And I go, let me tell you why, and launch into my diatribe of why it's wonderful, and why I could never have an audience with the mayor if I lived in New York City, or make something happen so quickly, or make a big impact with the volunteering that I do in a different place. So I will tell anyone why we're wonderful.
That's awesome. And we've got a national audience for this podcast, and those that aren't familiar with whether it's Akron or Cleveland or Northeast Ohio, there is certainly I think a bit of a chip on our shoulder when we look at ourselves at the rest of the world, and there's certainly, like, you've seen the t-shirts Cleveland versus the world, and that sometimes applies to the underdog, the come from behind attitude. I think that we embrace, and it's a special nature of it.
Agreed.
So Meghan, talk to us a little bit. Let's just start by telling us a little bit about why social media is something that you've invested a lot of your life in. What makes it important to you?
It's a great question. I have a degree in English and in art history. So as an undergrad, I really saw myself running a museum one day. That was the plan. That was the thought. I did not know what I wanted to do right when I left undergrad, but I thought that's where I'm going. And some of my first jobs right out of college, the first real one was with Smuckers, which really, taught me about corporate America, taught me about one of the best places to work, right? That's what they're alleged as. And really was this great place as a training ground and a proving ground of figuring that out, what you wanted to do. And I was just taking calls. I was taking calls in French for their customer service group, and started to see, hey, why are we all having to respond to email inquiries in between calls. So I helped them build an entire kind of digital communication arm and stop taking calls and just did that. And this was the very dawn of companies being on social, and that changed my trajectory. And from there on, it was, hey, we should really be doing this. We should be thinking about digital communication. I worked for this huge company that didn't have this. And then that translated into smaller companies or agencies. And like in that bio talking about Sherwin-Williams, I'm sure they had tons of resources for market research, understanding who their audiences were. But until they were living it, I managed the social for a couple brands of like direct to consumer aerosols that would be for detailing cars, right? And they thought their key consumer was an older man restoring a car. Well, these are rattle can pieces of, it's a kid with their first car. And they didn't have that knowledge until I said, hey, look, I'm going to build you guys an Instagram. This is this new thing called Instagram. And people are already using your name in a hashtag. And look, it's all young kids with their first car trying to make it their own. So let's launch into this market. Let's do this. And so really, I learned running. There was no stopping. It was on the ground. It was figuring it out, best practice, without having a college course about it. And sometimes my years at the University of Akron, I'd get to go into these social media courses and guest lecture. And I would say, hey, these classes where you're sitting right now didn't exist when I was an undergrad. What do you think I studied? And they would go like, I don't even know what would you have studied? This is it. So I fell into it, but it seemed to combine the two things that I cared about most, which is art and words, right? So English and art history seemed to be a really cool place for them to converge, which what kind of imagery is going to inspire action or really stop the scroll, and then have the knowledge of an English degree of going, and then once I get that with your eyes, how do I get you with the words? So it was the perfect storm for me.
I love it. So very similar to where I came from as well, because understanding how people communicate is so important to social media, and being able to then convey that in a way. One of my favorite quotes is, I'm gonna mess up a little bit, but it's along the lines of, "Good reading is damn hard writing." The ability to write something in a way that people can understand it quickly and easily is such a talent. And in social media, whenever you've got some verbiage that goes along with it, you need to be able to get that across quickly and in a way that makes sense to people. So we could probably talk for a long time about, like, if you want to get into social media, what classes do you actually need? Because you and I both know that there is not necessarily a degree that is like social media that teaches you some of the nuances of it, but that may be a different topic. What I think that the connection here, and so your introduction on social media, awesome. Now you're working in more of the predictive buying habit space currently, right?
Correct.
And tell us a little bit about, like, what does that mean, and how is that coming across? How are you working with that?
So, I'd been at small agencies and higher ed and was ready to do something different. And this job, Veracast, came across, and I was like, wow, that is really interesting. This is a company that pretty much owns all of that consumer data, the rewards cards that you have. They understand what you're buying at the grocery store, those circulars that you get, those are all printed by my company, but then they synthesize that data and kind of sell it back to these big retailers or grocers and say, like, okay, women in Akron, Ohio in their 30s are buying this at this time. Or hey, let's send them this circular, or let's send them this little coupon, because we know in our data that, yes, they might see a digital ad, but getting that physical thing they're going to stick on their fridge and remember to go to that store or go to that website is so important. So I have learned this different level of marketing within this world of predictive buying and data and insights, consumer insights. It is wild. And it's also really interesting in this world of cookieless marketing and trying to figure out how to gather that data and keep it relevant when we're all saying no to cookies. And it has been a journey, but it is really interesting to have that data behind you and making these marketing decisions or digital ad buys. And it's kind of changed my world and my view of social and in working for this company.
Well, it sounds like something that you certainly learned a lot more about it, and a different detailed nuance of how we can communicate with folks. So what can you tell us that would be a relevant connection to some of the people listening to this? And keep in mind, this could be anyone from a small business owner to a large Fortune 500 company, or possibly to maybe a nonprofit. What are some of the tips that you've learned along the way?
Well, I mean, we're in a weird spot right now, right? With inflation, with what feels like a looming recession, and consumers are not loyal like they used to be. And this data that I'm swimming in and things I'm seeing in these trends is that you can't just rest on your laurels. You can't just assume that that consumer that you have not given rewards to, or those extra little small discounts, is just going to continue to have the same buying habits. So consumers right now across all ages, demographics, are truly, it sounds so simple, right? But they're looking for a discount. Veracast is working with Dunkin' Donuts right now. Actually, they just revamped their entire rewards program, and how they were doing it. They're primarily a digital company. They do a lot of work in digital media, digital advertising. They weren't doing very much direct mail whatsoever. But right now, the preliminary numbers of this campaign that they're running with Veracast is already showing that that physical coupon that they got that was running in congruence with digital ads is working. People are bringing it in. They could have just scanned it, but they're bringing it into physical stores saying, hey, how do I start this rewards program? Hey, how do I get my $1 midnight coffee? Right. So we are seeing that little extra bit, some coin in our pocket, right, is going to work. That little chunk out of what already is growing grocery bills or other bills, and we're not spending like we would. So that small discount, that treating your consumers as giving them special reward or rewarding them for loyalty is super important right now. But also seeing that direct mail piece, which is it feels like going backwards a little bit, doesn't it? I used to work for a direct mail company. They would do, right after I left Smucker's, I thought it was, oh, this is so old school, right? They had the real pen technology where they would write, you're smiling. Yeah, you get it. And you're like, did a person write this? No, it was a company here in Akron that had, I don't know, 100 of those machines doing things for politicians and nonprofits. And it was really interesting. But I'm like, okay, how is a coupon in the mail really going to make a difference? And all of the data is showing that right now, this is this prime time with inflation, that little bit extra could put somebody over the edge to make a purchase that they might not have otherwise, or that little luxury purchase that okay, if I'm getting some dollars off, I can justify this. And that really seeing it in your mailbox is much better than taking that action, because when we see that digital ad, we're all a little bit ADHD, right? In that how we interact with ads, that if we don't have the need to buy it right now or the time, we're scrolling past it. No one's saving. I mean, some people are, and sometimes I do, but no one's really saving ads to take action later. So that reminder, that thing you can put on your fridge, that thing I'll put them next to my desk. Oh, I'll have to remember to go to that website later and get that discount. So that is really what I'm seeing. It's this cool kind of return to truly omni-channel marketing, and it's really powerful. I wish I could say everything could be solved with social and social ads, but I know it cannot.
Something you learned along the way, and as a matter of fact, we have one of our next speakers on the podcast is talking about direct mail, and particularly about sustainability, which is going to be, I think, a really fascinating topic. I've had a chance to hear a little bit about it, but just the difference between environmental aspects, comparing direct mail versus a social media post or a text or whatever it may be, fascinating. But one of the follow-up questions I wanted to ask here, Megan, is you mentioned couponing or a discount and having an extra hit. How important do you think that is in relation to just getting in front of someone? Because of course that has a lot of value too. And there could be some of our listeners that, well, couponing or discounting is just not part of maybe their whatever they're selling. So what do you think the balance is between those 2 points?
Okay. So I hope this doesn't sound like I'm going into left field with it, but how I'm seeing with just getting in front of people, it's getting harder and harder, right? The space is getting louder, especially on social. All these algorithms are making you pay to play, even to have your content put in front of people. The best way that I've seen is influencer marketing. It is the present, it is the future. No one is buying anything without seeing someone that they trust try it first or say that they are interested. How many times, we go to our friends, think about your digital habits with buying now, or even with, say, you need someone to do your taxes, where you go. You'll go to your Facebook, you'll go to your Instagram. Hey, does anybody have this person, the service that they trust? And that is kind of like my BBB background of, trust. It's that symbol, or it's who is endorsing it. And so breaking through that crowded market, if you don't have an influencer strategy, you need one. You cannot just be posting great content anymore. It has to be truly lifted up by these people that everyday folks, users are trusting, are going to, and they're so used to, they understand that, yes, it's an ad, but a lot of these influencers now aren't just posting for money anymore, right? They're truly believing what they're selling, and folks are seeing right through that. We've been some millennial and Gen Z, right? Think about millennials and Gen Z. They have been advertised to as long as they can remember. They've had the exact same thing right in front of them that they want, that they thought about, that they mentioned one time. So we can spot an ad in our feeds like that and scroll right past it. But stopping that scroll for, oh, what is this experience? Someone I feel like I know, I have that parasocial relationship with, I'm going to stop and see what they're doing. And that is a great way to cut through all that crowded mess on social, is an influencer strategy.
So yeah, definitely something that as I look at influencer strategies and influencer marketing, it is, I can start to see the fear in clients' eyes as we talk about that, because you lose control, right? To a certain degree, if you especially if you don't do it right, you're saying to yourself, okay, is influencer marketing just trying to hire Kim Kardashian to talk about my brand? There's the initial thought about what that means. Like, so how do you get across that barrier when people are thinking about this? How do you make this something that it seems like this can be accomplished and is not a massive hill or unknown area which you're just jumping into and you have no idea what's going to happen,
or that you're going to spend an insane amount of money on and see no ROI, right? Yeah. It's
right.
Scary. The Kim Kardashian picture of influencers is really not it anymore. We're down to a micro level of influencers, of where you want to be in a target area, or what they talk about, what their niche is. Say it's a parenting product. Well, there are moms and dads on Instagram and TikTok that it's not going to cost that much for you to send them that product and have them talk about it, and you don't lose control. In the influencer campaigns I've been part of, you say, here's your call to action. Here is your coded, your UTM of where people are going to click. So I know that Kurt sold this many of my units, so I know to go back to you next time. You can get right down to the nitty gritty of how I want that picture to be, right? If you are working with an influencer that does not, or an agency that does not give you that level of oversight and control, then it's wrong. Don't run away. That's when you run. But you're down to approving that picture or that story before they post it. I've made little micro changes of, hey, could you turn around that jar because there's a brand on it that we can't have in there. And of course, you're paying them $1,500 for this one little 15-second post, or 2,000, whatever. It goes up 10, 15, 20, depending on the level, but you can get down to those small micro influencers and still make a splash and still reach new markets and still get your name out better than a traditional ad in my mind. So work with the ones that give you those permissions, that level of control. The good ones absolutely do. And it is not scary, and it's vitally important to your mix and how to get your name out.
Yeah, and in my mind, micro influencers there's a really desirability that comes with that, because it's almost like it's the same idea as the band out there that has not, if you're the first one to find out about them, you've got something really cool.
There's a cool factor.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you can be the first ones to capture that influencer that's going to make it big, and it really, from what I've seen, it's a relationship kind of thing. So they want to grow their own social following. Your brand wants to get its messaging out there, and if both can if rising waters lifts both ships, right? If that can be accomplished, that's an ideal goal. If you had an unlimited budget, or let's say you had $10 million to work with to buy an influencer, would you go big or would you go small? I know it depends on who the client may be of the project, but what would be your take on that in general?
Oh, I would absolutely go small. I would go niche. I would get more bang for my buck with it feeling like, Instagram or TikTok is kind of exploding that day, right? Or when you run a campaign, could I have two really big ones for that? Sure. But could I have 30 smaller ones and maybe some mid-tier, right? That I ask to post around the same time. Oh my gosh, everyone's talking about this product right now. Why am I seeing this everywhere? Right. And what is that human rule? I think it's the rule of 7 or something. You have to see something so many times before you take an action. So, okay, if I see Rihanna posts about it, maybe I will. Maybe you're going to get those initial, but it's this kind of slow game of I'm seeing this everywhere. It must be really good, right? I know that Rihanna gets money to do this, but all these other people in my feed are talking about it too. Maybe I'm missing out. So it is that fear of that FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. Why does everybody know about this except me? Of course, some rich person, maybe that's out of touch for me. And that's really where we're getting to in the influencer market is, oh, wow, okay, I might not be able to afford that thing that they want, or I know that they just get paid to do this. So I'm going to kind of ignore that. But the mom next door, oh, she does this, she uses this with her kids, maybe I want to do that too. Or that runner, oh, they like these shoes, maybe I see running past my house every day, maybe I should be trying those shoes. We're down to that level now anyway of how we interact online. And especially if Gen Z is your target market, they are so into authenticity. They are going to be less likely to take an action because of a celebrity, right? So they are way more no makeup selfies, reality. And that is that way of, I would definitely spread it out, do as many small influencers as possible that are real people.
Right. Well, so just to recap a little bit here, first idea is that we can't rely upon return customers, and thinking a little bit about that and the reward process to it. The second part here is influencer marketing, and which really comes down to, I think, a sense of trust, authenticity, referral, messaging. So what would be a third either tip or trend, Megan, that you're seeing this year?
I don't want to say authenticity again, because we kind of hit that with influencer, but also with the content that you're making, huge. So if you have, which please, I hope listeners, I hope you have a nice social team and a great strategy, especially organic is so important. I've spent the vast majority of my career in organic social, and I know paid social is extremely important, but if you don't have organic social, you have nothing. You have nothing to base that on. If a customer wants to interact with that ad and they go and see that there's nothing to then get that momentum and get into your feeds, your ads won't get as far, right? You'll be spinning your wheels in the dust. And all of these algorithms reward us for good social content, for good organic content. You're going to get better quality scores on ads if people are actually stopping to interact with them. And if your paid social and your organic social are not talking, right? Because your organic team knows exactly what's going to get someone to stop, right? They're working really hard for that. They don't have money behind it. And if they're not consulting with your paid team on, hey, this piece of content really hit, really got tons of engagement, let's promote it, or let's create something similar because it'll stop people. So that authenticity, really relying on how you're building your organic social is so important, right? Again, like I said, users on social have been so used to being advertised to. So you can't think like an advertiser. You have to think like this influencer. So to step back from this perfect, polished corporate thought of what social should be and truly allow your teams to have a little bit more fun with it. Look at the success of Duolingo in the last year. I don't know if you've seen this on TikTok, right? They let an intern, she wasn't an intern, but that was the view, right? They let her put on the costume and make hilarious TikToks and things that were on trend and goofy, and they weren't an ad, but people are talking about Duolingo and it's in your mind. So giving your organic teams a little bit of autonomy to make authentic content that isn't an ad, that isn't this perfect picture of your product or this perfect, you have to leave room for humanity, and remember that there's a human behind these, because people aren't interacting with robots or machines anymore, right? Or stepping back to allow them to have human responses to, a difficult consumer or something that's happening live. Hey, one of my favorite lines is with difficult consumers or angry people is like, hey, there's a human back here. I'm trying my best to help you. And usually that just, oh, that cuts it, right? Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. Thank you for trying to help. And sometimes it doesn't go that perfectly, but it does stop them in their tracks to remember that there's a human behind all of this. And so really that authenticity and a third pillar of your social, and really giving those teams some power to make those decisions and be more human as a brand. And that seems counterintuitive, but really be more human. That's what's stopping people. That's what's creating engagements. That if you want to survive in this crowded field, really think about giving it some personality of a real person, and not just this brand, not just this perfect polished picture of what legal thinks it should be, right?
Right.
Have some fun.
Well, so you and we're both writers, and what that kind of comes down to is your voice, right? How you approach it as a content creator. So my follow-up question on this one, and this may be for the content creators of the world. So if you're listening to this and you're creating content, pay attention to this right now. Or if you're on the other side of it and you've got a social team that you're working with, you're trusting someone else, this is important for you to hear as well. Meghan, what do you do at that point when you're starting to create content, you're starting to create that voice, that message, that authentic self? What do you have to do? Do you have a process to get your mind in the right place to be able to say that?
Oh, yes. And it's so funny. When I started my career, I remember being a little salty of like, my college career did not prepare me for writing, what was 140 characters then, not 220, but I was like, oh, this feels so lowbrow. But really, it is incredibly difficult to write in those couple characters, to inspire action, to still be witty, to still be funny, to still be human. And how my process has always been, and with my team now, is we use Sprout Social. So shout out to Sprout Social. It's the best tool out there. It's not the cheapest, but it is the best. And the system that we have is trying to go, I had this dream of as a senior, I'm going to get my team to go out 2 months, right? We're going to have so much work done. And the way that social works, the way that having still topical content works, we can go out 2 weeks. Like that's as far as we can get out. But within that writing, it is laying it all out in front of you. Okay, what's the content that we have? How do we want to speak? And my team writes it up, or I write it up, and it goes into a bit of a queue through Sprout. And then I'm seeing it as a final. So I'm making any little changes. A second pair of eyeballs is great, right? Are you slipping too much into your voice? Or say you work in an agency, are you slipping too much into that other client voice? So a second set of eyeballs is great, but really sitting down to do several posts at once really helps you get into this groove, right? If you're just posting one thing a day, okay, I did my thing for the day, you can kind of lose that. You can lose that thread. You can lose that excitement for the voice. I find it that I get deeper and more excited as I'm scheduling things out. So I try to sit down for a couple hours, get things scheduled. Same with my team. So truly, just like you would have to exercise your brain if you're writing a novel, right? You'd have to force yourself to sit down for a little bit and get into the mindset. So instead of just ticking off a box of getting that post done for the day, is take a little bit of time to see it as a whole and then review. I mean, you're not going to write that novel. You're not going to write that email to your boss. You're not going to write something without the review. And that is such an important piece is, okay, let's do the week. Let's see how it hits. Let's see if sometimes I'll find myself using the same word, over and over in a few of them. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Because if someone's scrolling and they see something similar, let's change that up. What's a synonym for this thing? And that seems like it's getting into the weeds a little bit, but I feel like it's super important for the flow and for engagement and for keeping very busy eyes engaged for that, half a second that we have to get them.
Right. Well, the phrase that I love that you just said, and I've never heard this before, but that is the excitement for the voice. And I think that if you're working in this industry, you have to be able to get yourself excited about what you're doing and how you're presenting it. And we know that there are plenty of people that are going to be listening to this that may be working in a manufacturing facility where you're making some sort of a piece that goes into a piece that goes into a part that goes into something else down the road. And there's not maybe it's not the actual thing. So it can be hard to get yourself interested and excited about it. I'm of the mindset, I love to learn. I love to just, investigate and so on. So I feel like it's kind of easy for me to get excited about anything if you have that kind of a mind frame about it. But for those listening out there, make sure that you put yourself in that space where you can be creative and you can dedicate some time to it. And as Megan just said, don't just crank out another post. Put yourself in that mindset, be there, be present with it, and own it. And if you can't, then find something else to do or come back to it later. I think
Put it down.
Megan,
Yep.
right. We know that there's times where both kids miss the bus that morning and you're still stressing about that. That's
Put it
not the
down.
time. Exactly.
That's something, excuse me, that when I go and I'll volunteer my time, I'll speak to entrepreneurs or artists as entrepreneurs. You and I talked about this of within the Akron community too, doing a lot of speaking. That is a question that comes up a lot, is how many times a week should I post? Should I be on every platform? And in this vein of what we're talking about right now, I always rewind and I say, don't do more than you can actually accomplish. And if you're going to just do it to do it, people are going to know. If you're going to just do it to check a box, do what you have the ability to do well. And yes, if it's a day that 2 kids miss the bus, if everything, it's not going to be a good day to do that. Just take a pause and take the energy of expend it where you actually can, right? It's so easy to just be like, I need to be on every platform. I need to be doing all these things. I'm just going to check the box. I'm going to get that done today. And sometimes it does happen, but truly to do what you have the energy to do, because if you're not, all these algorithms reward regular posting, right? And they reward posts that are engaging or that get people to stop. And the second you create something that's not, you're getting these negative quality scores. They are going to start delivering your content less and less and less. So what feels like an off day of, I've just got to check this box, could be detrimental to your organic strategy in that, hey, this was crickets, 2 people engaged with it, whereas my last one, 200 engaged with it. That algorithm is going to definitely give me a negative and stop then pushing my content out because they want people. So I might be getting into the weeds here too, but you have to think in the mindset of, we are the product on social, right? The users are the product, and all of these platforms make money from advertisers. So they're making money from us. So if you are creating things that are not making people spend more time on those apps or on those pages, they don't want you there. So you need to think of what's going to slow people down. Videos are huge, right? They're saying that, oh, Kurt's sitting there for 3 minutes watching this. That means we can send more ads to him. We can then increase our price because we say men in this age range spend X amount of time on our platform. So you are helping them sell advertising by creating engaging content. And if you don't, they don't care, gone. They're going to go to the next person who does. So take that pause, create something good. Don't do it just for the sake of doing it, because these giant robots of algorithms will just pass you on if you've done something just to check that box and get your post done for the day. So super important to remember that we work for them. We are the product. We are helping them sell advertising, and the engagement is a gold standard for any social.
Great advice, Megan. Well, anyone listening to this, I hope you got a lot out of it, because there was a treasure trove of top level information drilled down, and take a note or two from this, because I think that you can plug this into your strategy or your day-to-day and make this really improve what you do and how you represent your brand, or just how you get through the work that you have to do. So thank you, Megan. And are you ready for a few quiz questions to wrap us up today?
I sure am. I think I've had enough coffee where I can do okay.
All right, so these are all should be within your wheelhouse, but and I think some are easier than others, and some are going to be, I think, are almost trick questions. So the first one here, so Google, runs everything in the world, so somewhat. So Google's the number one website that people use in the world. After Google, what's the next most popular website? Do you think it would be Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Amazon?
Well, because Google owns YouTube and they force us to use it like a search engine, I'm going to guess YouTube.
Correct. Yeah. YouTube number 2 out there. Folks
They
watching
love
videos.
making their products, like forcing things into our feeds. So as we all
Right.
know, it is part of our search. And I wanted to learn how to do this thing really quickly. First thing I see is a video.
Yep, that's it. So correct, YouTube is the second most popular. I did a little bit of extra research, so just for our listeners here, just kind of interesting. And it depends on who you ask. I looked up what are the top 10 websites out there, and there's some consensus, but there's also a little bit of we're not sure. I guess it depends on how you calculate the data. So for the first few, it's pretty consistent. So one source said that it was Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Wikipedia, Reddit,
Yeah.
Instagram, Lectortmo, which I'm not familiar with. Do you know Lectortmo?
No, I will be looking it up today.
Manga and anime, apparently.
That makes perfect sense.
And then the last two on their list was weather.com and then Yahoo. Yahoo's still making a presence, which was interesting.
All right. Okay, boomers.
Just for comparison, I gotta give you one more. So the other list I saw was Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Okay, that was all the same for the top 4. And then Instagram, Baidu, Wikipedia, Yandex, and Yahoo, and WhatsApp. So interesting. And that's worldwide. So I think sometimes we think, all right, this is just what's right in front of our faces. But there's a few on both those lists which I never use or some I hadn't even heard of before.
I'm gonna be using them now.
Yeah. All right, question number 2. What type of media drives the most engagement on Facebook and Instagram? Is it videos, images, carousels, or memes?
Well, in my experience, it is video. And that is, like I mentioned, the algorithms love it because we are spending more time on said app or platform and they can charge advertisers more. So video.
Correct. 2 for 2. Yes, video is number 1 out there. And moving on to question number 3. And this is a guessing game here, but what percent of consumers get purchasing inspiration from social networks? Our first choice is 17%. Second choice is 26%. Third choice is 37%. And the fourth choice is 48%.
I'd like to think it's 48, but I'm thinking that's not correct. It's between 26 and 37 for me. I'm gonna let's lean into 37. That feels right. It's a little less than half. And I know from my experience that it's definitely not a quarter. I don't think it's that 26. So 37.
Correct.
Yes.
You went 3 for 3, Meghan Meeker. Well done.
That one was a guessing game, I'll tell you what.
Yeah. And that's going to change from year to year.
And demographic to demographic too, right? Like I know I'm guessing Gen Z is quite a bit higher, but this is like the overall user.
Yeah.
Millennials probably even higher. So really interesting.
Absolutely.
But I mean, think about that. That's almost half of consumers at this point in the entire demographics, like of all consumers. Wild. So if everything we talked about today, if you're just doing one of them, I think you're halfway there. But really think about that organic strategy, and clearly with 37% of consumers making those purchasing decisions because of social. Huge.
And then we know which direction that number is going as well.
Up and up.
Absolutely. Well, I got some of those questions from wholewhale.com. They had some good quiz questions up on their website, so I appreciate that from them. To wrap things up, Meghan, for folks that want to connect with you, learn more about your company, your business, what's the best way for people to do that?
LinkedIn, absolutely. Meghan Meeker, you will see my smiling face there. Instagram, if you want to see my dogs, and in the spring I post about bees and photography. So yeah, or if you're local, coffee, wine, I'll talk about social media with anybody who wants to listen, or bees or dogs.
Love it. Well, thank you, Meghan, for being on the show today, and listeners, thank you for being a part of this. Thanks. We're excited again for another year of our our podcast here, and have a great day and make it marketable. Take care.